So basically, my project was titled Women in Agile Development Teams, and it was my bachelor thesis in the spring of this year. And for the project, my research question was, how does gender diversity in Agile development teams affect the work, and how do we get women to pursue a career in Agile development? And my project investigates how Agile supports women, what makes women pursue a career within the field, as well as if gender diversity actually has an impact on the work. And for answering this, I use qualitative analysis on the data that I obtained from interviewing 9 women, which was 5 practitioners and 4 students who were either currently or previously working in the industry as Scrum Masters, or the students were currently studying at the IT University of Copenhagen and having taken the course called Industrial Scrum Master Training, as this is actually the only course that specifically teaches Scrum and Agile to the students in practice as well as in theory. And I decided to interview only women as I wanted to answer my research question from a female perspective, and also chose only Scrum Masters from the professionals as they have a good overview of the teams and could therefore provide some information on the dynamic of the whole team. And my project answers several sub-questions, where the first 2 are concerning the evolution of gender diversity in computer science in Denmark, as well as Agile taught in universities, and these were answered using literature study and by analyzing university websites. And in order to give an estimate on how to get more women to pursue a career in Agile, as well as the evolution of gender diversity, I found it to be necessary to investigate the current status of women in IT. I found that while the number of women applying to computer science degrees was actually rising from the 1960s up until 1984, it has been dropping since then. The number of women on the IT job market fell from around 30% in 2008 to almost 25% in 2019. And as you can see on the slides, the number of women on the studies at ITU were significantly higher on some of the less technical IT areas. In fact, only 11.8% of the students at software development were female in 2016. As of 2019, every 3rd applicant to the ITU was female, but it was mainly still on the softer studies, such as digital media and interactive technologies and digital innovation and management. In 2020, the number of women applying to software development actually rose with 68% from the previous year, which is an enormous rise on a study where only the previous year, only 2 out of every 10 students were women. And some of the main reasons for this gender inequality in STEM fields result from some of the stereotypes that are surrounding the field, as well as a lack of awareness of the jobs in the field that are available. And as you can see on the graph, the number of women that are studying on IT-related bachelors has been slowly rising for the past 15 years. The orange line, I don't know if you can read, but the orange line represents the influx of women, while the green are the women who actually completed the degree, and the blue and gray are the same, but for men. And back in the 1970s, the amount of women studying computer science was 25%, and we're only now nearing that number again. Furthermore, women have had a significantly higher dropout rate than their male counterparts. In fact, it was 24% in 2017 that dropped out, and that number has fallen to only 13% in 2018 at ITU, which is a result of a targeted strategic effort from the ITU, which has included several activities focused on female involvement, like the IT Camp for Women, or Coding Cafe only for women. All of the students that I interviewed actually mentioned that they had at least a few female peers, while most of the practitioners that I interviewed had actually never experienced a development team with a woman on it, and none of them had actually experienced one with several women on them. Most of the interviewees also shared the belief that it would be relatively easy to procure a job within the field, as many companies are actually actively searching for female employees. As a result of this increased focus on recruiting women into IT and also keeping them there, with initiatives actually taken by both the universities, the industry, and the government, the number of women entering the IT workforce will most likely grow in the coming years. And I also analyzed the websites and course material for the courses at 5 Danish universities. These were the University of Copenhagen, Aalborg University, University of Southern Denmark, the Technical University of Denmark, and then the IT University of Copenhagen. These were all chosen because they have several IT bachelors, both programming heavy and less technical. Of these 5 universities, none offer more than 4 courses mentioning Agile in their course descriptions, and these courses are then in almost all instances only offered to the most technical programs like computer science or computer science software development. This means that a large amount of the IT educated students are actually never taught about Agile, at least not in practice. And when working in teams, all the different team members, of course, bring qualities that the team benefits from. And it's, of course, also best to have different strengths and weaknesses. And several sources found that gender diversity actually affects the teamwork because they bring different life experience and perspective to the innovation process, and that diversity leads to products and services that benefit a broader range of consumers and businesses. Several of the interviewees also mentioned that the social environment was one of the things that was most affected by having women on the team. Although some also mentioned that being the only woman on a team could result in a specific expectation that they would be the one to do typically feminine things like bring cake and organize these social events. And one actually even mentioned being considered to act as the secretary of the team. The interviewees also agreed that women, generally speaking, brought different qualities well suited to Agile, like communication, cooperation, social and emotional intelligence, creativity, and actually making women aware that some of the most important values in Agile are actually these qualities that are ideally suited to the more feminine characteristics is an important aspect in getting more women to go into Agile in the future. And none of the people that I interviewed felt that the Agile methods especially supported women, but more supported a specific personality type where these values that were on the slide before, that are generally found to a higher degree in women, were present. And the traits from the figure are like communication and being especially organized and keeping attention on social relationships. And these are all qualities that are especially useful in the role of a Scrum Master, where you have to be aware of your team members and potential conflicts or problems arising. The women I interviewed also mentioned a specific fear of failing and not feeling like they were qualified enough to be in the field. This is also something that can be supported in Agile because a big part of the attitude in Agile is learning by doing, and it values transparency and teamwork very highly. One of the interviewees mentioned that she quickly fell behind her male peers as she had other interests outside of work and spent little time improving in her free time, which most of her male colleagues did. Here, Agile presented opportunities in less technical positions, like, for example, the role of a Scrum Master. And in this way, it can be said to support women. The reason that several of the women that I interviewed ended up in IT was in almost all of the cases either by chance or because of a role model in their childhood who presented them with IT as an opportunity. Many of the practitioners that I interviewed actually did not have an education from the field of IT. Most of them actually had no prior experience in the method before they started working within Agile. They mentioned that the work environment was more present and that they loved the role because of its nature of helping and motivating the team without the pressure of managing, and that Agile actually in general presented a more human aspect to working in IT. Lastly, it was mentioned that Agile presented more interesting opportunities and was seen as a very significant asset when entering the job market. The women that I interviewed also all mentioned that a lack of knowledge of the opportunities that are present within the field was one of the major reasons for the gender inequality. Another mentioned that women needed to adapt to a different attitude because many could feel intimidated going into a stereotypically male field and therefore potentially hold back or give up too quickly. This is, for example, when there's an entire hiring team comprised solely of men, which could be a little bit intimidating. And in general, breaking down the stereotypical belief that IT is solely for male men with no social skills and informing of the many different aspects of IT was a focus that they felt was needed in order to improve the gender balance, because many of them actually felt that out in the world where people don't actually work with IT, this was the general, I'm just admitting her, was the general stereotype that people had about IT. And while a team can be perfectly functional, only containing men who possess to some degree these qualities, having women to whom these skills come natural would be a great asset. And as Agile becomes more popular as the main method used for working in teams, the expertise needed of the manager also changes. And within Agile, this actually means that a new skill set containing many of the qualities that are inherently feminine is now more needed than the technological acumen that used to be the main expertise. In order to get more women into Agile, we first need to consider getting more women into IT. And many of the interviewees felt that if women actually first pursued IT, they would automatically end up working in Agile development, as its popularity would only continue to grow. And some important factors in getting more women to go into IT I found were female role models and encouraging the interest from childhood. Today, IT and computers are stereotypically thought of as a male interest, and most computer games are marketed towards boys and men. As you can see in the slide, these are some ads for computers or computer games that came out along with the first computer. And these are all pretty male targeted. And introducing girls and young women to programming and IT early on, and hereby breaking down some of these stereotypical gender barriers, is actually an important factor in recruiting more women into IT as in general. From the interviews, I also gathered that another stereotype that needs to be refuted is that the field of IT, again, is solely comprised of nerds and introverts and men with zero social skills sitting in a basement and just coding all day long. And it needs to be made visible that there are actually many different types of people working in IT, and also that there are many different types of jobs available within IT, not all of whom require an extensive technical knowledge. Especially in Agile, an enormous part of the job is actually communicating with all kinds of people, understanding social relations, supporting teamwork. And in order to get women into the field of Agile presently, there is an additional need for the industry to advertise that high technological acumen is not a prerequisite for acquiring a job. Especially the role of Scrum Master has a great use for people with a different skill set, which women naturally possess, and also concerns no developmental work. It values people and organizational skills much higher than technical skills, and this needs to be highlighted in order to attract more women to the position, also from other fields than necessarily IT, as we will also probably need to actually get people from other different types of education in order to meet the demand for IT jobs. Women are also known to be less likely to apply for jobs that they do not feel adequately qualified for, and they also tend towards doubting their own skills and qualities and justification in holding the position that they have. And as the stereotypes are challenged, this mindset surrounding IT will hopefully also lessen, but a greater focus on this might be needed if companies wish to improve their gender diversity within Agile and IT. They should also focus their efforts on the existing employees that they have. For example, again, if the hiring committee at companies is wholly comprised of men, they will most likely also tend toward hiring men, as we tend to look for what we know from ourselves. Additionally, several of the people that I interviewed mentioned that in order to get the women already studying IT to pursue a career in Agile, they should be introduced to the method with hands-on experience. And as I mentioned earlier, not very many university courses actually introduce Agile, especially at least not in Denmark. And for ITU, there is, for example, only one. As there are many roles within Agile and IT that don't necessarily require programming experience, extending this course to be taught in some form to other programs could introduce numerous more women to Agile and encourage them to pursue a career within the field. And the same could be done for all of the courses at the other universities, which could necessarily attract a lot more women to the field of Agile. Yes, so thank you for listening.